Hello, beautiful creative people. Welcome to howtoartjournal.com. I'm your creative tour guide, Kyla Givehand. Today I had the pleasure of chatting with Hali Karla about her creative journey, how she has built a sustainable practice, and the power of authenticity. Hali is a passionate artist and holistic guide who cultivates creativity as a way of navigating her life and her relationships. She is the visionary behind the Spectrum Art Journaling Experience and the Making Art Medicine course. She hosts workshops, collaborations, and circles that inspire self-acceptance, celebrate wholeness, and honor the mystery of interconnection. I adore Hali's work for its soulful perspective and the way it conjures a sense of the sacred. I call it an otherworldliness. Hali is a nurturer and a truth-telling creative energy who uses intuition to make the mind-body-spirit connection. That's what can often lead to courageous transformation. So listen in as Hali shares her story, some of her art journals, and, of course, her favorite art supplies. And make sure you stay until the end when she reveals what she has in store for her creative community. Hali, thank you so much for joining me. I love that we've been able to switch seats. It was very fun to be in the seat of the person being interviewed a few weeks back with you. And I'm happy that you said yes to let me now come and have a conversation with you about art journaling and just your process, your creative process, but also, you know, sharing with us all the different things that we love to hear about here at How to Art Journal. So welcome.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here talking about something I love.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you guys who are watching this, as soon as we connected and you know, both of us were on camera, I saw her art and I went, oh my God, I love it. Right. So try to listen and try not to get soaked into the art too much back there because it is pretty awesome. But also make sure you take a look at what she's got going on behind her, because that is what attracted me to Hali and her work. Is just the organic shapes and the colors that she uses. And I don't know, I always feel like there's an otherworldly quality to her work. And so hopefully as you listen to what she does in her creative process, it might give you some insights into how you might bring some of that otherworldliness into your art journal as well. So Hali, let's start with the sort of, everybody knows I have a standard set of questions I ask here. So why don't we just jump right in with that first one? What brought you to art journaling?
You know, I love this question too, because I've been an artist my whole life and I've been a journaler my whole life. And maybe around, I was thinking about this morning, I think it was around junior high, I had a really excellent art teacher. And she was a retired psychotherapist who became an art teacher in middle school. And so then I think is around the time I started keeping a sketchbook, like the artist's sketchbook. And then I did that all through college because I went to college for art as well, undergrad. And then I sort of kind of dwindled away from that. And then I graduated, I worked in a gallery, I showed art, and then I became a nurse. I went to school, I went to grad school, and I became a nurse, and I worked in the healthcare field for a while. And during that time, I kind of quit making art altogether. And it was my mother, actually, who brought me to art journaling because she was doing some healing work at that time. My sister and I were grown and off living our own lives, and she was diving into doing some of her own work. And she was with a therapist who introduced her to this idea of art journaling. And so my mom was talking to me on the phone and said, so I started this thing called art journaling. And I have thought my mother has always been an artist. And she was talking about it. I was like, and I'm thinking this whole time, I'm like, wait a minute, like I went to school for art and I don't even talk about art like this anymore. And I don't even keep a sketchbook anymore. Like what happened? And so she was telling me about art journaling. And so I went onto Google and put in art journaling. And I think this was like maybe 2010, maybe 2011. I'm not great with years. And it just like, boom. There were people all over doing it. And so through a little network, beginning with 21 Secrets, Connie Solera's 21 Secrets, I picked up a sketchbook again, and I started doing my art solely in a sketchbook, and more formed than my previous sketchbooks had been, and definitely more about my internal world and my internal work and my healing work. And that is really what brought me to art journaling. And I haven't looked back since.
I love it. Thank goodness you didn't look back. And that's funny because I'm listening to you and I'm like, moms and Google, right? It's like that moment where you're like, your mom sparked this thing and then it sent you over to Google. My story is similar in that a woman just in a cafe mentioned something to me and saw something I was doing. And she said, here's some names to Google. She wrote them on the napkin of the cafe, gave it to me, went home to Google and was like mind blown. I was like, oh my God, there's a whole world of people who are doing this that I didn't know about.
That's how I was, exactly. Like, I felt like I'd been like under a rock and just the art world went while I was working in nursing, you know? I was like, when the hell this happened? Like,
yeah. And I love to, just going back to the teacher you had, because I think that is so, when you said that, I was like, that, right, that moment of having a good teacher, a good art teacher specifically, right? I can tell you some horror stories about times I tried taking art classes. One in particular, I took an art class at a junior college. It was like community, like I was just doing it as like continued education. Like I wasn't trying to get a degree in art. I just said, you know what? Here's a intro to drawing class. I'm going to go take it. First day, she gives us this thing. She says, I just want you to draw what you're thinking. And so I'm doing like some Zen doodling on my paper, and she comes over to me and she says, oh, glorified doodling. Great. I never went back to the class. I just felt, I was like, oh, okay, this is not right. So I think having a teacher that encourages you and supports you and allows you to be where you are in your process and maybe help move you forward, that is priceless.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the things I'll say about her too, since I have her on my mind today, was she wasn't an easy teacher. You know, she was definitely inspired, and that was catching. And she always had like these invitations that were just so much fun, and that was so inspiring. But she would challenge you too. I mean, she would challenge you to shake up the way you were doing things a little bit. And so I think there's something about that too, a real sweet spot with somebody who's teaching and guiding that can show you that you can get past hurdles within yourself and in your creative process. And that makes you go, oh, I want more of this. Because I'm learning about things in myself I didn't exactly know were there, that I hadn't seen come to the surface before. So, teachers, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And you do, that's funny that you say she did that, because you actually, I would describe you as someone who does that too in your work, like challenging the students in the class to go do something that they may not have done. I should have brought the books over here, but I have 2 books because of you, books that you mentioned in your, journey as an artist. And I was like, oh, I have to get that. And I got it. And I was like, oh my God, could I make art like this? Right. So just challenging me to think of it differently than I had ever thought of it before. One of them is the Georgia O'Keeffe book that you mentioned in one of your classes. I went to 2 different used bookstores and was like, I am going to find a copy of this if I have to scour the town. And it did. I knew Georgia O'Keeffe's work. I had seen it on postcards, and I've even been to Ghost Ranch, but there was something about the way you described it and the way you showed it that made me see it differently. So yeah, I think everything you just said about your former teacher, you have, you do that as well. I would totally say that.
Gosh.
Yeah. I would totally describe you.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. So, okay. So we've got your mom who's sort of reignited this for you and brought it back to your, brought this back to your forefront. You brought out your sketchbook, and you've started journaling. So what is your creative process like now that you have reconnected to your art and you have this healing background through nursing? And what does your creative practice look like now?
Yes, and this has been a bit of a journey too, I think, over the last, whatever that's been, 5 or 6 years now, that I've really just immersed back into my art making. In that art journaling is always the gateway piece for me at this point. And I think that that's really important. I do a lot of larger paintings too. A lot of that is my own process as well. But art journaling is the bridge between my inner world and the outer world, whether it's a painting or it's my relationships or whatever I'm processing in my life, that sort of thing. So my practice itself is really eclectic. And I got to say that this was hard for me because I came in and I realized that this was a really important thing for me and that I probably needed to do it most every day because I feel better when I do, and I'm a nicer person when I do. I feel more like myself. And so then I got into this framework of thinking that, okay, well, it has to be really disciplined, or it has to look a certain way, or it has to feel a certain way, or I have to come to it and approach it, at 10 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning, or maybe I'm a night owl, 8 o'clock at night. And I say this because I have explored so many different ways of trying to put myself in a box with my creative practice, only to find that really some of us flourish in a practice when we don't do that. When we say to ourselves, it has to be fluid. And so my creative practice is daily. Sometimes I don't pick up paints at all, or whatever color. I don't make art. So sometimes it's written in my written journal. I always keep those. Sometimes it's totally completely visual, and there's no words at all. Sometimes it's in the morning. Sometimes it's in the evening. Sometimes my creative practice and my concept of it has expanded to include things like not actually doing the creative outpouring, but doing the receiving. So whether that's going on like what they call art dates or something like that, but it doesn't even have to be that complex for me. It can just be as simple as getting out in nature and taking a walk, and just practicing presence techniques, breathing, narrowing the focus and attention to what's right here, right now, with my senses, becomes really crucial. So I have this really kind of loose idea of creative practice, and yet still it kind of hones in every day into engaging what I think of as my creative spirit, that piece of me that's inspired already. It doesn't have to seek, but that can be triggered by the seeking, if that makes sense. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You're saying so many things right now that are just like ding, 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 like, bells going off in my head. Especially because what I hear you saying is your practice is daily, but it looks different each day, and it might happen at a different time each day. And I think that's so important for people to remember, is that, I used to do morning pages, which is a Julia Cameron construct. And I got myself into this thing of thinking they always had to be done the first thing in the morning. And I know that that is her way, and that's the way she teaches it. But then I started allowing myself to do it in the middle of the day or at the end of the day. And I was like, you know what? Pages are pages for me, right? I just want to do the pages. So I love that you're sharing with people that it changes, it morphs, it looks different each day for you. Sometimes it's writing, sometimes it's words, sometimes it's just visual, sometimes there's no paint. When you said that, I don't know if you saw my face. I was like, wait, sometimes there's no paint? What do you mean? So I love that. I love that you give yourself permission to have a creative practice that doesn't look the exact same every single day.
It's super important. And I think also, it's kind of a dance for me personally. Like some days I need a lot of spaciousness in what my practice looks like. And some days I need the narrow focus. So I might really come to it with an intention, whether I decide to do painting or writing that day, or a combination of both. And sometimes I'll go through a few months where it's just kind of whatever I feel like that day is what I go with. I'm really being very fluid with it. And other times maybe I've become a little too fluid, and I'm feeling like all out there, and I'm not feeling very grounded. And so I'll go through a period where I do it in the mornings, first thing for a while. Awesome. And then as that starts to recenter me, then it starts to morph again. And we begin to explore these other ways. So like what you're saying with the morning pages and that, there's something so beautiful about somebody who can continue to do it in the same way again and again. And there's something equally as beautiful about exploring what happens if we come to it in the afternoon and we've had part of a day to process and still part of a day to process. Or if we come to it at night as a reflection of the day that we're leaving behind and before dream time. All of these things change the way we dialogue with our creative spirit and creative process. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And you're making me right now think about my yoga practice. Because when I started yoga, it was always done in the morning because I was a teacher, classroom teacher. I had to do it because by the time I got home, I was beat and I wasn't doing much of anything other than plopping on the couch and, trying to make it to the bed at the end of the day. So I always did it in the morning. And then when my life shifted and I couldn't get to it in the mornings, I just stopped doing it. my practice just kind of fell by the wayside. And so I think that's true of anything that we use to sort of nourish ourselves, is we have to remember that it's okay to do it differently. Like you may do it one way a certain part of your life, and then it may have to morph and shift as you move forward. So I love that. It's like a little permission slip to do it differently.
It's so important because it makes it sustainable in our lives.
Yeah, sustainable. Something you said there too. You said sometimes you're out taking a walk and you're just practicing presence. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that's powerful, because I think practicing that. And my husband and I do a lot of breathing work as a part of our yoga practice, pranayama. And it is the one, I'm not really good at meditation in that my mind never really goes quiet. But when I'm breathing, when I'm really focused and present on my breath, everything shifts and changes, right? So I love that idea of practicing presence as a creative act like that. I'm gonna ponder that more and sit with that, because it feels pretty heavy and profound. Heavy in a good way, not heavy in a bad way, but heavy in like, oh, there's a nugget there that I want to explore. So
me too, like my whole life. It's I love it. I'm so devoted to that.
Yes.
It's about how we see. And
yes.
as artists, isn't everything about how we see?
Yes.
The perspective we're looking with.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so true. Oh my gosh. I'm also thinking about what you said at the beginning. My husband and I have this thing. I'll say to him, I have to do art today or I'm not going to be a good human. Right. And it makes me a better human. If I can just have my art practice, then I am actually more prepared to go out into the world and deal with people who are not necessarily nice, or people who have road rage, or people who are right. I'm more equipped. I'm better equipped if I am maintaining my art practice. I don't get caught up in their negativity. Person who's honking at me, I can just say, as they pass by, I can let them move on and it doesn't bother me. When I haven't been practicing, I'm more like, what's your problem? What are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Which is not where I want to be, not where I want to vibrate in the world. So yeah, I think having a good creative practice does make us just better humans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is a question I didn't have on the list. So if you need a little time to think about it, it's fine. But you mentioned something about art school. And so I'm wondering, what's one thing that you've taken from or held on to, or that a lesson or a technique or whatever it is that you really just cherish from your time in art school, that is like, it always shows up for you. It kind of, I don't know, it permeates everything that you do. Something, and it could be something small, something big, a lesson, a quote, whatever it is, but something that just you're like, yep, that thing you go back to from art school.
That's a good question. I like that one. And I think I'm going to give, I'm going to give you my immediate response, which is maybe a little bit different than the question itself, but
yeah.
And it's a personal related answer.
Yeah.
Let's see how to put it to words. So I guess you could say I struggled in art school, though struggle sounds a little odd, but I never felt like I belonged, and I never felt like I fit in. We all go through that to some degree, and I think particularly creatives and artists. But with my teachers too, many core teachers. And what I want to say is so I actually majored in photography and ceramics. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I didn't pick up painting till after I graduated.
Okay. That's actually, because that's one of the questions, like what other kinds of art do you do? So it's interesting that you're telling us that now. Okay, good.
And this was back when photography was dark rooms, and
wow. So you were actually doing film, working with film.
Yes. And the two, both photography and ceramics, were very different, and they didn't always mix well. It's like I could only do one a day because you don't want to take the dust into the dark room kind of stuff. But the work that I was doing, the way I was exploring photography and the way I was exploring ceramics later, it was never quite in alignment with the type of art that my teachers were making or that they were teaching to make. Yes. And so I always came up against that tension with them because they didn't quite know what to do with me because I was always questioning. I was always doing the things that they didn't maybe particularly deem as art in their medium or their realm for whatever had been their process at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that as one of the greatest lessons about myself in particular, because I couldn't not do it my way. I couldn't not, in some ways, push those buttons at times.
Yeah.
I couldn't not explore the part of me that had to go, look, like, you know, I know, like, you're all going out and doing these incredible black and white Ansel Adams type photos, but that is not my thing. I want to cut things up. I want to make photos off of, you know, like image, like I was doing all kinds of stuff. I want to go in the studio and then I want to alter it 10 times over in the dark room and with glue and, you know, and with ceramics, it was sort of the same way too. It was always about the process for me. And I didn't have a teacher that spoke to that so intimately, that they were very much process oriented. But when I say about the process, I mean about embodying yourself in the process.
Yeah.
Not just about the process of carrying out the steps to get to the end,
Right.
but actually being in what you feel through the process. And I couldn't not do that. So there was this piece in me that had to rebel. And I think in retrospect, that was what I was learning about in myself, because I had to keep, in the face of people saying, well, this isn't how you do it, and this isn't going to make it, and this isn't fine art. I had to keep going, okay, wait, where's my courage? I've got to keep being me and exploring what this is. And so that was huge. And interestingly, as I'm saying this, I remember, and I remember this off and on a few times a year, my ceramics teacher once said to me, we had done these tea bowls, like Japanese style tea bowls, and glazed them. And I don't think he was particularly fond of some of the stuff I was doing at the time, but tea bowls are a very classical ceramic form. They're very free and can be very free form, kind of raw and gritty in that. I'd made a set of 4, and he was coming around looking at my stuff, and he comes to us and he's like, now that is some amazing art. And then he looks at me and he starts looking at my stuff again. And I could see he had this moment where he was looking at it differently. And he goes, Haley, do you paint? He goes, I think you have a painterly touch. He's like, I hadn't seen it before. And I was like, no, I don't paint, you know. There's the rebel in me again, you know. But there was this little piece of him that saw something in me that would later be so deeply drawn to a painterly effect. And as a side note, he did painting as well with his ceramics. He was a person to see that. Yeah. But I think the courage piece is really what I had to live with, finding and using the courage again, and coming back in the face of teachers who maybe didn't get it and couldn't always offer me what I needed to see. So there was struggle in that, but I think in retrospect, there was definitely benefit.
Yeah, I love that story. That's beautiful, because you say courage, and I also hear in there authenticity and truth to yourself, like being who you really are. Like in the moment you said, I could not do that. I could not be who I was, right? And I think for so many of us, especially those of you out there right now that are maybe just finding art journaling or just finding your way to art in general, whatever it is, photography, ceramics, whatever you're doing. Oftentimes we come and we haven't quite developed our voice. That was me for poetry too, right? So it's words, it's images, it's visuals, everything. Any creative practice. You come to it and maybe you come with a really strong voice and maybe you don't. And for those that come with a really strong voice, exactly what you described, like it's that moment of saying, no, I know this is what has to happen for me. This is where I am. In my process. And then for those who come and maybe don't have a voice yet and they're trying to find their voice, there's still that moment of being courageous enough to say, this is what feels right in this moment for me. So this is how I'm going to do it. So I love that. I love that story, because it absolutely brings home this idea of because of course, as we're looking at your art right behind you, right, we can see that you got a little rebel in you, right? Because it's not what traditionally is taught. Like I'm glad that you told me you did photography and ceramics, because I'm like, really, I was going to ask you, is that the kind of work you were doing in art school? Because it is so different from anything we typically think of when we think of traditionally formally trained in art. So
Well, I avoided painting classes in art school. I remember that. I was trying to remember this morning if I took even one, and I don't think I did.
oh wow.
We had very traditional teachers at the time at the school I was at,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I probably avoided it specifically for that reason.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I remember like I took a lot of drawing classes with certain teachers, and I explored all kinds of other things, printmaking and that, but painting was not something I really embraced at the school I was at.
Wow. So do you still practice those forms of art? Do you still do photography? Do you still do ceramics?
Well, photography is one of those beautiful things that, of course, everybody does it now. If you do anything online, you're using photography to some degree. And
Right.
so, yes, but I don't do it like I used to. I really don't take my manual camera out very often anymore and do the f-stops and the apertures and all the big deal thing, I mean, it's amazing how far cameras have come. My phone camera, 13 megapixels or something. It's incredible,
Yes.
and easy.
Yes.
And,
Easy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
totally like I didn't want to go digital. I remember there was a point where I was like, I didn't want to give up my 35 millimeter, manual stuff. And then when I did finally, I was like, why did I wait so long? So I'm always using photography
Awesome.
on some level, but not to take like fine art photography. I'm using it to document my process, my life. And in some ways, when I look back at what I did in school, that's what I was doing at the same time too. Sometimes I was making mixed media forms off my work, but I was also documenting ideas, and I was documenting life and what I was processing about that sort of stuff. And ceramics, I don't do so much anymore.
Okay.
Neither my husband or I. He went to school for ceramics as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we just don't practice it as much anymore. He's also an incredible painter and illustrator and a musician. And the thing about ceramics is you have to have a studio and you have to have a kiln, and there's a whole lot of stuff you have to have in order to keep doing that particular medium.
Yeah.
As our lives shifted and changed, we both just picked up things that were more readily and easily available at the home. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I love hearing that you have an artistic partner, because that just sometimes that's important to have someone who understands that life. So that's awesome.
Yeah, even if they're not artistic themselves, if they can be supportive of the fact that you are, and it's going to make you seem quirky,
Exactly. Yeah, because Damon is creative, but in his own way. And so oftentimes, though, I'll do or say something, and then I'll look at him, and he's like, I know, it's the artist in you. It's all good. He's like, I married you. I know what I got into. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely good to have somebody who can just understand the quirkiness that we have and be okay with it.
Yeah.
So why don't we, I'm dying to have you, I don't know if you have any art journaling pages you can show us or things you want to share. And I'm going to put you in the spotlight when we do that part here. So it's going to go big. Okay. I think we'll see if I can.
I brought a variety too, because I have kept so many different types of journals over the years.
Awesome. Okay, whenever you're ready, just
okay.
Yeah, just start showing them to us and talk about them however you want to do it.
So this one is not as much like heavily on the visual, but this was an important way that I kept a journal for several years. And it's more of like an idea journal. And now when I look at my art journals and that, it doesn't combine so much of the words and the visual. But this particular year, like I did these pages that were like doodles that were like, these are Instagram photos, I think, that I cut out and put in at times. I wonder if I have a calendar page here. I would do sketches and some words, when I was writing certain things, gratitude lists, exhibit postcards I would tape in. This is a really awesome way to keep a journal that is so meaningful to your life. Quotes that I would come across that had meaning to me at the time, things that friends would say to me. Sometimes I like to doodle with watercolors or pencils when I'm talking on the phone, because that's how I listen best. So all these different ways of using the pages that aren't so heavy in paint. And then I would tape right in like calendar pages. I had one that had a better example, and then take it out in the field and do little sketches and that sort of thing.
Nice. I love that combination of all documenting your life in journal, right? So some pages are very, you could tell that you took some time with them in terms of like the one you just showed us, like I'm out in the field, I'm in nature, I'm doing this. And then the other ones where you're like taping bits and pieces from your day into one page. Like I love the combination of that, because to me, that's that's truthfulness. Like that's your life, right? That's where you are. So I love that. Thank you.
And that's what they feel like looking back on them. They're like a timeline, of your process. And those become some of the most like closest to my heart journals, I think, for flipping through later. And I had this one that I had, and I haven't looked at this one in years, but I pulled it out this morning, Kyla, and it's like handmade watercolor paper. Well, it's not watercolor. I'm sorry. It's handmade paper. It's really absorbent.
Mm-hmm.
And so your paint dries really fast on it. And I wasn't sure if I would like it at the time, but I actually fell in love with it.
Oh my gosh.
And there's so many things. I'm going to stand up so this looks a little better, I think.
Okay.
There are so many things in this journal that like I need to see right now. And I have forgotten about it completely. So this one is, again, a combination of words and image. And, certain classes or things I was doing, putting together, again, still ideas from life, like on this page. But then some pages were more just like kind of diving into my own little zone, my own little other world, and pulling up the imagery, taping things in again. But obviously it's more visual than that other one. There's more color happening, and that sort of thing. So this one has a really special place in my heart, I think.
I love it. Can I see that binding again before you take it away?
I got it at Barnes and Noble.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah, it was made, I don't know, India or Tibet or something. And I tape, like sometimes I'll tape actual leaves in on the pages and use those. It's all the things we do, Yeah.
What would you say was your time in that journal? Like, was that a month? Was that a year? Did you go back and forth between it? Like, what was your time frame with that journal?
I'm going to see if I can tell you. I know when it ended for sure. It was about 2012. It might have been about a year, maybe a little less than a year as I'm looking at it. Yeah, I think it was a little less than a year, probably like 10 months or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you work in multiple journals at a time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, at this time when I did this one, I was really coming back into my own, really bringing this awareness and idea of practice and presence into my art again. Figuring out what the heck art was even going to look like for me at this whole different stage in my life.
Yeah.
So, at the time I was working on this one, I might have had one, maybe two going at once. Now I have like maybe 5 to 8 at a time, if not more. So
same here. I'm guilty of that as well.
Well, you make them too,
And that's what's hard, right? Is I'll make a journal and then I'm like, oh, I got to fill it up. So I'm constantly, playing with. So I probably have, to be honest, 6 journals, 7 going at a time where I'm going back and forth, maybe even 10 to be, complete. If I'm teaching a class, right? There's the journals for the class. So yeah.
Well, and speaking of ones making, I pulled this one too. Now, I just did this one last year, I believe. But I have a spiral binder, like a cinch machine or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I'll take old large paintings or old loose art and sometimes old journal pages and solder and bind them to make, pages that aren't white, but then that you can go into and then like create on. And stand up again here. So this was one of those. And it became, just this really fun kind of practice.
Oh, I love it.
To hit the pages differently. And sometimes they totally change and sometimes they're inspired by what's there.
Haley, do me a favor and just bring it up just a tad up. Yep, right there's perfect. Awesome. Oh, I love it.
So these are, again, and you can see like this one was a little bit more recent than those other two. And so I've gotten a more visual. What I find now is I actually do most of my writing in a written journal now again. And then my work has become very, very visual again. So it's been kind of a process, and I'm sure it'll dip back in to combinations, but
yeah.
So these are fun because it's like all these little parts from different processes of my art through the years that I've just kind of put together and then made new art with.
Yeah. I love too that I love how you've torn some pages and some pages are different shapes and sizes. And I love that. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So that's a fun way.
Yeah.
Making your own. There's something special about that.
Absolutely. Okay, keep going if you've got more to show us. Oh,
Yeah.
a big one. I love
Yeah,
it.
this is just a big one. You've seen this one in the class.
I've seen that one. I don't think I realized it was that big though. Like,
yeah.
Wow, I love it.
So self-portraits, I think any artist should try to do self-portraits occasionally from time to time, even if it's not your thing. It's such an important like way of seeing and just exploring your mediums and stuff. And this is a more recent one for another class.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought this one mostly because I just wanted to say that I love the Canson mixed media sketchbooks. They're affordable and they don't become precious.
Yeah.
But if you make a page that you like and you want to tear out and frame, or if you do sell your art, if you make one that cuts, makes the cut, then it's easy to do that with those too.
Yeah.
And then
do you sell your art, Haley?
Occasionally. Mm-hmm. It's not my primary focus anymore. And before I became a nurse, I helped run a gallery and I was showing artwork. I was showing both large scale sculpture and some painting that I did back then, which was mixed media. I didn't do a whole lot of painting, but it was mostly ceramics, wall hangings and sculpture. Mm-hmm. And when I came back to art and kind of realized that I think I had always been an intuitive artist of some kind or contemplative artist. Mm-hmm. I realized that I have to be really aware of keeping my process true to my process, which is an internal process. Mm. And that can get really muddied up when we're making things to be our sole source of income and sell. So I'm really careful about that piece for me. Now, sometimes I'll do studies and I'll sell them. Like I have a bird study series I did a few years ago and sold some, and I'll end up putting them on sale again eventually when I'm trying to clean up the studio, that kind of thing.
Right.
And sometimes I'll have people inquire about specific pieces and I'll sell to them, but I don't make that my main goal, even in my creative business, Yeah. So from time to time when I feel like it's time to let things go, I'll put things up and see if there's a person interested. So
yeah, no, I love that because you're right. It does get muddy. The ability for you to actually be in your process, kind of like what you talked about earlier, like actually embodying the process. It gets muddy when you're focused on the product needs to be sold at the end, right? So sometimes that it can be very blurry. So yeah.
And every artist deals with that. And I think there's a way to work with both. I think you can have especially with art journaling, you can have a process that is purely your own and intimate in the sacred space. Mm-hmm. And then you can also be working on a body of work that's intended to be, put out there for others.
Yeah.
And you can kind of have that line. And I've done that some. So yeah, there's a way to manage both. There's a way to work with that. But my devotion really is to the experience of the process as this internal thing.
Yeah. And that actually is very obvious in your work in a beautiful way, that you absolutely give in and give over to the process, because I think that's what I mean when I say this otherworldly quality to your work. It is almost as if you, for lack of better terms, go into this zone and what comes out is less about what you intend and more about what needs to be coming out. So yeah, I love that.
Well, thank you. It's nice to know a little bit of that resonates, because it is sort of how it feels a lot of the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you have one more for us?
I do. And I just thought I'd bring an altered book because these have become one of my absolute favorites. Yes. And I have several going right now, but this is one I've worked in more. Mm-hmm. And there's a variety of pages, and I skip pages. I skip all around in these. Mm-hmm. And I use them very simply. So obviously I'm writing sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm just blocking in portions of a page and leaving a lot of the page that's on there, whether it's word or image. This was an altered book on trees.
Ah, okay. Beautiful.
And it's kind of old, like the photos are kind of like from the 70s or something. And I love that about it. It's a little retro or something.
Yes.
So I love altered books because you're not coming to a blank page, and I don't really have an issue with a blank page, but I really see a lot of the creative process as like we're arranging things. Mm-hmm. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And so when you come to a page with stuff on it, you're in response, you're in dialogue. Mm-hmm. With what's already there. And that's really how it is inside of ourselves too, where we're bringing what we have in our minds, what we are working with in our lives, we're bringing it to the page. And it all comes with us, and we're arranging it around and playing in color as we do. So yeah, this one.
I am in love with this book. Oh my goodness, this is beautiful.
Yeah, this has been one of my favorites.
I'm not really an altered book kind of, like I work on book pages and I do some, but when I think altered book, my mind goes to, assemblage, and I've got to have bits, and so the way you've done this just gives me a whole other appreciation for altered books.
Yeah. I like to keep it pretty simple. I see it as you're picking up a book and you're just you're altering the pages. So that's really it. It can be as complicated or as simple as you want it to be. So,
I love it. I love how you've played a lot with the images that are already there in the book.
Yeah.
I
find it particularly meaningful too. And I encourage people, if you're playing with the altered book thing and want to dive in, find a book that has something you love in it. Yeah. Whether you're a word person and the words are something you love, and you can leave little bits of words or imagery. And for me, trees, love them.
Yeah. Trees and nature. I do absolutely think of nature when I think of you. So yeah, when I look at your work, I see lots of nature there, right? I see bits and pieces of animals and the stars and moons and galaxy and leaves, and I think maybe I even see a hint of a butterfly wing behind you there, and right, so I see lots of that showing up in your work, which I think is also what draws me into it for sure. Yeah. So why don't you, since we have you here in the spotlight, do you have any favorite supplies or materials you just like swear by, live by? These are your go-tos. Anything you want to share with us in terms of supplies and materials?
Yeah. So a good sketchbook that you don't see as precious, that to me is priceless. So even if you have a really precious art journal, have one that is not so precious. And I will often, and this may be a throwback from like ceramics working, where you can't work on one piece till the end. You have to work on several at once, because there's drying and glazing and firing, and they all have these different stages. So you're working on multiples all the time. I love working in multiple journals. So I know that's not exactly like a favorite supply per se, but like having like a cheap Kansas, mixed media sketchbook for me, and then having an altered book I love, and then having another sketchbook that's maybe, a little bit more, a little better than the Kansas sketchbook without the spiral. So like those three would be like primary for me. As far as the substrate goes, the book itself. And then I was thinking about this too. Ultimately, I keep my supplies so simple for the most part. And then I'll throw in little accents with things sometimes with special supplies. And that is a really important part of my practice too. I've learned that the simpler I allow it to be, the more likely I am to keep coming to it. And then if I want to get fancy with something or try something out, then I can really invite that in and kind of make it as like a special thing, a special date, sort of thing.
Yes. I love that. So say more about your supplies are so simple, because as soon as you said that piqued me. I've been playing around with watercolor a lot because it travels well. It's easy. I can pop it in my bag. All I need is water and a brush. Like I don't have to have a whole setup. I don't have to have, so say a little more about what you do to keep it simple.
Yeah. Well, one, you just pinpointed one of them. I travel a few times a year, and that's where I really get to go, okay, how have I been complicating my practice? For that very reason, what makes it feel portable to me? Whether I'm taking it from my studio into the couch to watch a movie. So, a small set of watercolors, basic acrylic paints. And now I have a whole cart of acrylic paints, so. But I also have this little basket by the couch that has just kind of the basic colors that I love. So you don't have to have all the colors to make all the colors.
Right.
And you learn a lot about color theory by just mixing the colors you have with you too.
Yeah.
And like me, obviously in my work, like I love color, color just makes me feel alive. So basic acrylics, one crucial supply to keep it simple also and to keep it loose is large paintbrushes. So it's another way we tend to get very precious, and then our art we become tight in it, intense.
Yeah.
And if you ever take a class with me, you'll hear me always say this, is start with a large paintbrush.
Yeah.
It loosens you up. Things happen that you can't plan. Things happen that make you go, ugh, and then you have to deal with it. And then it's fun because something comes out that you didn't expect. So large paintbrushes are crucial for me too. Acrylics, and then I brought, these are really fun also for keeping it loose. They work good under and over acrylics, and they're the Portfolio water soluble oil pastels, and they're a little bit like crayons, so there's no getting real precise with these.
Right.
And I love that. Now if you work large like I do sometimes, working large is more forgiving.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And so, when you work with these on a large scale, it has a different thing. You can be a little more precise. But even in smaller sketchbooks and art journals, these are a great way to loosen up. And the water solubility makes them fun to smear around too. But ultimately, like when I carry a journal with me everywhere, and I will always have a small set of koi watercolors, a tube of acrylic white paint. Sometimes I'll take a Payne's Gray or a small black too, but most often it's a Payne's Gray watercolor that I take with me.
Oh, nice.
And then one of those travel watercolor brushes, that you can put the water in.
Yes.
And a couple of Fiber Pit Castell drawing pens, because they'll mark over acrylic, and they're not, they're waterproof. And then graphite or a pencil, and a white gel pen or two. And then I really like these also. So if you do a lot of like really colored mixed backgrounds, mixed media work, that sort of stuff, and you want to then add elements over top that are more defined, these are the Aquarella Bell all pencils. They're white and black is what I carry. They're made for paper, glass, plastic, and metal. So they're not permanent. So if they get wet, they smear or they move, or you can actually wipe them off. And that's why they're perfect for sketching things out over top of painted pages.
I love those. I love the Stabilo. They are like I think I have one in like every bag, on every table, in every jar. They're everywhere around here. Yeah.
And then as far as the acrylics go, I use an assortment of paints. I have some that are more expensive. I have a lot of craft cheap paints. I love Martha Stewart's craft paints. Those are a little bit creamier, more buttery. But just the ones that are, on clearance sometimes, I'll pick those up too. Liquitex Basics are great for starting out for people, but I actually really love the Liquitex Heavy Body acrylics.
Okay.
And then I like to have some that are like special treats. You can take, I think this is important for people to hear. You can have like all kinds of, really affordable supplies. You do not need fancy things to have a beautiful art practice. Have all kinds of really affordable things, gather them as you can, and then every now and then pick yourself up something that costs a little bit more. And two of my favorites for that sort of thing are, they're Goldens, and one of them is the Golden Fluid Acrylics. You can have one or two colors that you just love and that will bring a page to life. And then the other one is the Golden High Flow Acrylics. A little bit more liquid. They're kind of like working with watercolor. You can thin them down so that they even feel like translucent that way. Or if you leave them thicker, their opacity is gorgeous.
Oh, nice.
Really runny, so you can get like really great drips and stuff. So have a few things. To me, like these are some of my favorites because they're just like these special things. I don't use them all the time, but when I use them, and because I use them intentionally in places, they really add a pop to the page.
Yeah. So you will appreciate this little story then. I have a tube of the golden cobalt teal back when it was still cobalt teal before they made the switch over. I have been every now and then I just get the tube and massage it in my hand so the paint doesn't get in. Like I covet that one little tube. I'm like, eventually it's gonna run out. I mean, I use it so sparingly because it is like, when they changed the formula, the color changed a little bit. It's not too drastic, but if you've used the one that used to be the cobalt teal and you use the one that is now just the teal, you can tell the difference. Other people probably are like, I don't see a difference, looks the same. But if you've used the two, then you know. So I have like this one tube of heavy body cobalt, golden cobalt teal that I just, and if anybody looks at it, I'm like, nope, not that one, pick another color. Pick another color. So yeah, I agree with you. Keeping it simple, having some supplies that are kind of sort of like what you said about the journal, right? Where it's some that are the precious moments, but then some that are just, you're not going to have a whole bunch of attachment to them, and you can just feel free to use them so that you can keep your practice going. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And then I brought one more that never gets enough credit, but that those of us who art journal for a long time always end up getting. And I just wanted to mention it because it's kind of like the underdog, but matte gel medium. I mean, seriously, like when you first start out, you might have like your Elmer's glue, your Mod Podge, your glue sticks, you know.
Right.
Having a little bit of matte gel medium, or if you like gloss, go gloss, but gloss can get sticky, and that's why I like matte.
Yeah.
Lasts a long time and can make all the difference for mixed media layers. So I think that's a favorite.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And you're right. It is an underdog. It has lots of versatility and things we can do with it that we don't even, a lot of art journalers probably don't even explore until further into their art journal practice. So I think you're right about that. It doesn't get a lot of spotlight. So I'm glad you brought it out. Awesome. So I want to ask, I'm going to put us back in the side-by-side view here, because I'd love to hear what kind of words of wisdom or advice you have for people who are literally just starting to find art journaling today. They're like you and I were when we Googled the first time and we were like, oh my God, right? What kind of advice would you have for those folks?
Yeah. And I think my advice is kind of the same for every level.
That's good. That's good to know.
Beginner's mind is like, we have to constantly be coming back to that. But when you're like truly like beginning, it can feel so exciting and so overwhelming. And so I have a couple thoughts. First one is, don't take it so seriously, because there's so many places in our lives to do that. Do that everywhere else. But when it comes to your art journaling, just let it be a place to have fun and be safe and be true, authentic, and to just explore. And to be a kid again is a really great way to start. And that takes me to these, I think there's three little tips that I like to give my beginners. And one is compassion and caring. And I want you to have the kind of compassion towards yourself as a new art journaler artist that you would have toward that inner you, that's that inner child, that little you. And I personally think that is something we all need a little bit more of from one another, but we have to begin with ourselves too. So really bring some compassion in the way you view your art. So letting that inner critic and judgment out. Courage, be willing to take risks and do things you've never done and just play. And by courage, I also mean be willing to make some really ugly art. Like, be willing to make some really messy pages. Because you'll find that you can work your way out of a mess in these really beautiful, creative ways. So courage and compassion, and then curiosity. Curiosity is one of the best ways to remain compassionate and courageous in your process. Because if you mess something up, rather than that judgment piece coming in or that inner critic coming in, just get curious about it. Be, well, oh, look at that. That didn't go the way I thought it would. Okay, now what? And so what I say is, like, if you're just beginning, trust your impulses and hunches and try them out. Really see them through. Like, maybe you're working on a page and you're working with a teacher who's like kind of taking you through steps, and that's awesome. Have another page right next to it that is blank, or another journal or sketchbook. Keep working on that step-by-step thing. Learn those skills. Absolutely. Those can be important and make you feel equipped, in your practice. But have that extra page that you can just like smear extra paint around on, that if you get the hunch to explore the way of making a line that's not in alignment with the one, do it on that page. Be free. Have a space for that. And then I think also one thing I see a lot with people is that they give up soon into a page. So what I want to say is that you're going to make a mess. Be willing to make a mess. In fact, invite the mess, but then stick with the mess longer than you think you should, because that's where the transformation and the beauty really comes through. And if you don't know what to do, always come back to the basics, which are color and line and shape and pattern, and just bring one of those in and add it somewhere, and your page will begin to shift. And you, whatever you're feeling, if you're feeling tension, will begin to shift. So really stick with the messes and just be open to this process of transformation on your pages. That's how it becomes your own.
Yeah. Oh my God, Haley, I love that. Courage, compassion, curiosity, and then taking it back to the basics. What did you say? Color, line, shape, pattern. I love that. Because when I think about kids and the way we do things when we are little, we have no fear of failure. Like, we don't, until someone starts to instill that in us, we really don't, we will try anything. We're like fearless when we're kids. And it's not until we either like we'll touch a stove, but as soon as we realize it's hot, now we might, be a little more cautious. But it's that going into it with the not knowing what is going to happen, not knowing what the outcome is going to be, and not caring what the outcome is going to be. So I love that, going back to the inner child and really being compassionate. And that's one that I really have to work on. So I'm going to take that piece of advice, because I don't have enough compassion for myself a lot of times in my art. I make mud and I say to myself, come on, those colors make mud. What are you doing? Like internally, I have that moment of like, seriously, those two are going to get you mud. What are you doing? Yeah. So I think compassion is probably one that is so important, and probably can help you with some of the courage and the curiosity pieces as well. I don't have a problem with curiosity. I'm always asking, what if I do this? What if I put this on here? What if I draw this over it? So I'm a big what if person, but sometimes I do the what if and then I'm like, really, you should have known better, right? It's the compassion's missing. Yes. So I love that. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. So let's, I want people to know how they can work with you, learn from you, be in community with you. So do you mind sharing a little bit about Making Art Medicine and Spectrum? And then I know you also have like a creative community that you have online as well. So I'd love for you to share with folks about those ways that they can be in community with you.
Yeah, so let's start with the Facebook group is Holistic Creative Connection. And I've gone ahead and opened it up. Anybody that goes to my site and resonates with what I'm doing and trying to share is welcome to come join us in that group. And on my site, you will also find some free art journaling courses. One's called Art Heals, Art Reveals, and one's called 7 Directions. So those are a good way. I made them a little while ago now, a little over a year ago. But those are a good way to get an idea of how to really bring some compassion into your practice, for instance, how to like loosen up that kind of liberating, approach, and to get an idea of how I sort of teach, which I change all the time. So that's just how I work. But, and then on that page with the freebies, I think it's called Gifts at my website, you can join the Facebook group as well. Spectrum is a course that I founded 3 years ago. This is the 3rd year running, and it's really special, I think, in the creative journaling world. It's unique because it's such diverse teachers, and while we do art journaling at times, I like to think of it as creative journaling mostly. Some of the teachers bring things that don't even have you getting in your journal so much. So again, that like practicing presence in your life kind of thing. Yeah. They're healers, they're artists, they're visionaries. Sometimes we're doing step-by-step sort of art journal stuff, invitations. Some of the teachers will bring things that have you doing more inner work, like with grief, or perhaps like soul purpose type work, that sort of thing. Lots of teachers. I think I've had over 60 teachers over the last 3 years. This year we have 20 new ones, 25 returning ones. It's a really rich program.
Wow.
And so I love it. I teach very little this year, though. I'm just doing the opening and the closing this year. So as far as working with me, you just get a little taste of that with me, but you do get all of this amazing goodness from these other contributors. And I also offer feedback in the group, the Facebook group, for that Spectrum course.
Let me ask you a question about Spectrum before you move on. Can people take previous years, or is it just the current year that is available?
Yeah, so it's just this year that's available, but part of this year, and this will be changing next year. So this year's special. 20 new programs this year. Well, actually, it's more like 25 to 30 new programs. 20 new teachers this year. Nice. 25 returning teachers. Now, some of those returning teachers have offered their previous Spectrum workshops again.
Okay.
We'll call them bonuses. But some of them have actually created new offerings because they wanted to for the community.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of both. So you'll get like 25 to 30 totally new workshop offerings. And then you also get some of the previous years. That's the only way right now to get the previous years from Spectrum. So
okay.
Is this program. So.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. And then Making Art Medicine, which I love.
Oh, thank you. Making Art Medicine is a new program this year. It's 3 sessions, and and I don't think I said this anywhere today, but I want to put this out there. I kind of see teaching creativity the same way I approach my art. I do it intuitively. And while we have some structure, I also want there to be room for choice, room for the rebel, room for that sort of thing. So we do this kind of dance between, in making art medicine especially, we do this dance between these invitations that are working on some of your skill and your technique and the ways that you see, because as artists, this is what we work on. Yeah. And also that invite you to bring in your own intuitive voice. What is the way that you make marks on the page? What is the way that you approach portraits, or the way that you approach doing landscapes out in the field? So making art medicine, the 3 sessions, we use these containers of portrait work to bring us into this reflection about how we relate to ourselves and to others. Yeah. And then also practicing in our creative practice. And origin is landscape, so connecting with literally the land around you in very simple, doable ways, whether it's in your own yard or exploring the space where you live, wherever that be. And also a little bit of exploring inner reflective work brought onto the page about exploring ancestral land that you might have connection to. Yeah. And then the upcoming one is Impulse, which I'm having so much fun making right now. So this one is really a lot about what we were talking about earlier, about being free and remembering to be free, and going with our hunches, going with our impulse. And we have to know ourselves really well to be able to listen to those impulses and hunches, but not just to be able to listen, but to follow through in action with them on the page. Yeah. So there'll be a little less reflection work and impulse, and a little bit more play. And I'm putting some things in that may push some people's like creative buttons, Yeah. The way we were talking about, like, but I want to do it with this, like, well, do this first, and then we're going to do it like that. So a little bit of like the container so that you can really feel what your desire is.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to that so much.
Asking about those. Those have been really great programs. And then I'm going to mention real quick, because I haven't told anybody, so I'm saying it first here. There's a program coming next year. I think it's going to be a year-long program. I'll be announcing more about it in end of September, beginning of October.
Sweet.
One of my newest loves has been astrology. Now, not everybody's into astrology, but I don't look at it as a divination tool so much, but as a way of really getting to know yourself. And I want to do a year-long walkthrough with people of how to look at their own natal chart and looking at the archetypes that we all carry with art journaling. So keep your eyes out for that, because I'm just like overflowing with excitement.
You just need to put me on the list of people to be notified when it's open, because I'm in. Seriously, I have a whole journal that is dead. I have 2, one dedicated to my tarot practice. I'm not a tarot reader, but I use, I like to look at tarot cards, and I use them for my journaling then I also have a whole one that is dedicated to my astrology work. And I have several people in my community of business owners who are astrology guides, intuitive astrology guides. And so they do a lot of work with, like, when we're in our little community meetings, they'll say, oh, well, moon's in Scorpio this month. And so here's some things you guys need to be thinking about. And, your communication might be a little wonky this month. And right. So they have given me a different way of seeing astrology and a different way of seeing myself. And I'm telling you, it has been the most powerful transformation. It hasn't quite shown up as much in my art journal yet. So I'm excited about that.
It is incredible. It's a language. It's a language to know yourself and how we relate in the world. And it is so incredible. I'm so excited about it. One of the free things I do have at my site this year is short free new moon invitations related to astrology.
I think I've seen that. Yeah. Okay.
And so this new program I'm working on getting the nuts and bolts down for is really inspired by that. It's just going to take it to a whole different level. And I want to share with people everything I've been learning, because I've just been learning so much.
Same here.
For people I know in that, but now I want to bring it I want to help people learn how to do it for themselves.
Yeah. No, same here. I got, last year I set, one of the women in my community, she did a little mini course for people on how to map out your cycles based on your astrology. And when I tell you it was mind-blowing for me, I was just like, holy moly, like right down to telling me when I need to just unplug and take a break. Yes. And when I look at my pattern in the past, I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me? I should have been given a little instructional manual when I was born. And so that's why I keep my own little notebook, because it is like my instructional manual. Like the 52 days leading up to your birthday, you really need to just chill out, Kiala, right? That's my reminder to myself, not to be trying to plan a whole big thing and do really big stuff, because that's when that's when I need to be relaxed. So I'm very, oh my God, I could sit here and talk for hours about that. So I'm very excited to hear that that's coming.
Yeah. I think people don't realize it's not so much about the stars as it is about the seasons.
Yes.
And that's, oh yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, Hali, that's awesome. That is like a perfect. So listen, it has been absolutely amazing talking to you. I wish we could do it more, and we will find other ways to do it more, and maybe not on camera, but just in conversation in general, because I love hearing your process. I love the way that you say it back to us through your art, not just necessarily through words, but how you actually live this thing through your art, this way of being. And I can't say that about everybody, right? That's not just something I say. This is really something after following you quietly for several years. And then I found you talking about stuff on your blog that just made me say, oh yes, this person, read her more, listen to her more. And so I think, yeah, just following your journey quietly, and then now actually being able to be in conversation with you is, to me, like a really big deal. So thank you so much for allowing me to interview you and to talk with you, and just to be in community with you. So those that are listening, all these different ways you can connect with Hali, I'll have it down below in the description box for you. And you should absolutely connect to her in one or more ways, especially if you're looking to go deeper with your art journaling practice, because she does absolutely inspire that in you. So thank you, Hali.
Thank you, Kiala. It's been a pleasure.
Same here. My, wasn't that amazing? Hali and I got to chat a little bit longer after we finished, and she really does have some amazing things coming for her community. So make sure you connect to her, because if you're ready to take your journey to the next level, Hali is an amazing holistic guide. You've got to join her online, grab her free gifts from her website, and check out one of her online courses, or all of her online courses. Hali's also teaching in the Journey Within year-long course, and her lesson aired for Q3 for those of you who are following along and making handmade art journals with us in the Journey Within. So listen, it has been an absolute pleasure to chat with Hali. I hope that you grabbed some of those nuggets that she was giving, and that you absolutely connect with her. Read her blog, follow what she's doing, and really truly tap into someone who is using art as a way of transforming and healing. All right, this is Kiala. I'm signing off. And I hope that you will find your way over to halikarla.com. Make sure you join us at howtoartjournal.com. And as always, wherever you are in the world and whatever you are doing, go out and create something beautiful. See ya.